All right. So this is the Unbossing Leadership LinkedIn Live number 2. Welcome, everybody who is signed up and who is logging in today, maybe more or less spontaneously. I want to welcome you from our hearts, Karin Tenelius from Sweden and Marion Riemann from Second Freedom Unbossing Leadership. Karin is my exciting guest in the series of Unbossing Leadership and learning from people like her who have been in the business of unbossing leadership and creating self-organized teams or helping self-organized teams and organizations to come into being sustainably. And I want to say just a few words about her, but then of course she's going to introduce herself even more. So Karin is a co-author together with Lisa Gill, some of you may know her, of this beautiful book, Moose Heads on the Table. You might want to say a little bit about this interesting topic and what does it have to do with moose?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I learned that over 20 years of helping teams and organizations become self-managed, and you founded together with your partner, with your husband, Tough Leadership Training in 2003. So you have had a lot of experience. You've experimented a little bit. We'll hear about that over this period of time, several decades. And I look forward to learning about your journey, Karin, of course. How did you become so passionate about what you have been doing and are doing? What are the main principles? I can give a sneak peek because I had a pre-call with you, as I always do, and you are so clear and so rooted and so dedicated. And there are principles that are just very clear-cut, and they cut through the bullshit, if I may say so.
Yes.
Okay, and I also don't want to miss the opportunity to speak about the fact that, of course, I am the lead coach of the Transformational Leadership Coaching Program, or abbreviated TLCP. We will be posting a bit more in the coming weeks, and it has a large unbossing leadership component in it to prepare over a full year. So 12 months of peer and social learning, of course, systemic thinking, systemic coaching skills, as well as transformational presence, transformational coaching skills. And last but not least, of course, also about adult development theory so that you understand what worldview are you making meaning from so that you can help your coachees even more effectively. Okay, TLCP, you will get more information in the near future. But here I hand it over to you, Karin. So again, welcome.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, so great that you make the time. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey first. So give us
Yes.
a little bit of a taste. How did you become who you are today, and what were the steps and the stages of your work?
Yes. Thank you for having me here, and hello, everyone. Yeah, so I have a long background in experimenting with self-organizing, and it started with me being engaged in service management, one can say. I started out in the hotel industry and also studied service management. And the service management is about service quality is sort of it is the source of service quality is if people that give service have authority over what they do or not. If they are engaged and involved, that sort of determines the level of service and quality. And when I entered work life long ago, I saw that this that I had learned about engagement didn't happen where I worked. So I started to question, why are those theories not, used in practice? And around that time, I also came across the book that many others came across from Ricardo Semler, called Maverick. And he, as maybe you know, he described in detail how he inherited his father's company, and he had this philosophy of relating to people as capable and give the authority away. And I was so stunned and impacted by that book, so I couldn't let go of those thoughts. And then 25 years ago, I got the opportunity in a small hotel business in Stockholm where I had a training in service, a quite traditional training with the staff. And I started, for some reason, talk about Ricardo Semlers and his ideas. And the CEO in this hotel said, "Oh, this I want to try out in this hotel." So that was my first assignment. I didn't have a clue how to, what to do.
Okay.
And we together, the CEO and me, we tried to just talk to the staff and involve them and gave them authority. And this hotel they were in good shape, they were profitable, but I could see engagement emerge in a way that I never saw before. And I saw a big difference in engagement. And also this early case showed good economical financial results. So the profit increased around 25% in 6 months, and nobody knew. The owner didn't know what is happening. We didn't change anything, and so on. And this made me convinced that this was the future. So by then I had a small consultancy, and the next thing that happened was that, because this case was quite famous, and somebody called me and asked, "Can you be CEO of this little troublesome company with 15 people? We haven't been profitable since ages." So I accepted that, and long story short, I related to people as they were capable of solving the problems together. And it was a big turnaround. So from loss to profit in 8 months. And then I did that again in another company, an IT company. I don't know anything about IT. So I just did it. And then I thought, okay, I know this. I figured it out. The next thing was that I got assigned as consultant for 3 restaurant companies. And all of those owners wanted to do this magical thing, having a self-organizing company. But the owners couldn't shift. And that was when I learned that the people in the lead, the management, needs to completely shift how they are leading. And they couldn't do that. So we were well on track with the staff, and results happened, but the owners couldn't do it. So it was a kind of failure, but I learned a lot. And from that, I realized if I'm going to do this, I need to own company. And I'm not, I don't have heaps of money and didn't have back then. But I said to my colleagues at Tough Leadership Training that was then founded, maybe we need to buy some companies. So we had this crowdfunding, and this was before crowdfunding existed among us, just like the 10 of us. And we bought a company, a healthcare company. And then we acquired a few companies, small companies, and learned more. And that's what this book is about, those cases, what we learned.
Right.
Yeah, so that's my background, more or less. And since then, I also helped other companies, of course. And together with my colleagues, 25 people at Tough Leadership Training, that is what we teach is a key factor to have it work in reality.
So to help leaders really shift their mindset and their way of leading.
Exactly, their way of being and relating. And that is completely different from what they're doing or saying. And it's amazing how much your being impacts the people you work with and your team.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, so you mentioned 25% increase in revenue or profit. And I wonder if you can give us just a little bit more insight into what was going on behind the scenes when you say you did that work and you learned a lot. What is it that you actually did? Because in my understanding, what has to come together, of course, is what you spoke about and was maybe Tough Leadership Training is focusing about. It's the mindset, it's the way to communicate, all these things. But there's also, of course, enabling people and giving them the autonomy. So also restructuring and setting up, a new structure. So new processes and roles also. Exactly. How do you combine these? What do you actually do?
Yeah, so the first thing you do is to involve people in the idea and help them see some self-interest in working this way.
Okay, so what's in it for them?
Yeah, what's in it for them? And for one example is when we acquired a call center once. We came in there and we were new owners and they didn't, know us at all. And we started out by saying things like, we are going to work in a new way, and we want to sort of talk about what's in it for you.
Yes.
Because and people are, of course, skeptical and afraid even, and so on. So that is one thing. The second thing is to really give the authority away. And that was what we did in this first hotel case.
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned that if you do it half-hearted or you give 50% of the mandate away, then you don't get the effects and you don't, you don't get the results.
You have to be radical. I understand.
Exactly. You have to be radical.
Yeah.
And then what needs to be in place is a good working climate. And what I mean by good is safe, open, straightforward. And so it's like the working climate needs to be in place. And I've seen that over and over again when self-organizing fail, then that is not there.
Right.
So to create to shift the climate from what it is from the beginning to that, to safe, straightforward, trustful, needs and requires work, of course.
And it's in a way a very new experience. I remember for us talking about that, I believe, yesterday, where what you said, it's not safe if you don't have any conflict. So self-management doesn't mean that everything is so fluffy and nice and perfect now that you don't have to have conflicts anymore. Rather, exactly. The opposite, probably. Yeah. And the challenge is that so many people don't really have a real experience of what it means to be so safe at work that you can really speak your mind and that you can have conflicts and that it's not something that is getting in the way, but that is something that is actually required to make it work.
Yeah. So the peculiar thing is that conflicts is the access to that climate, to that psychological safety, as we call it nowadays.
Yeah.
The trust, the openness, and the safety. And the people are not, trained to be with conflicts and don't regard them as the access to that. There is no way around conflicts. So that's a process, of course, that you support the team to go through. And I never start with the structure. And that is a bit different from other colleagues in this little sector. They always start with the structures. And I don't say that is wrong because I don't believe in right and wrong. But my philosophy is that if you give people the mandate, they will change the structures that are unhelpful after a while. They will take away the structures that hinders them and install new ones that supports them. So structures will evolve in the process.
Right.
And then what you can do is to give people inspiration from other, organizations and come with suggestions and alternatives, but they will find their way because no case is exactly like the other.
Right.
So every organization needs to find their way. So working climate is a crucial factor to install or have emerge. Collaboration skills to be better in communication than we usually are as individuals. And then one thing that I have learned the hard way is when there are managers from the beginning, I thought from the start that we can train them. And at Tough Leadership Training, we train all sorts of managers in more traditional companies and self-organized companies also. And they can change and transform to a degree, but very seldom to degree it requires to be in a self-organizing environment. So I prefer to take away the manager titles. That doesn't mean that the managers need to go. They can have other roles and be experts, for instance, or coordinators or something, but rather not managers.
Yeah, and I spoke with Dunya, obviously, from Chrysos last week, and we spoke about Indaero as one of the prime cases. And one of the first things in terms of structure I hear is that, yeah, handing over the power means, yes, the leader is not the leader anymore, can find another role, and that the team or the group that works together gets to vote or give a mandate and identify their representative, and this role can rotate. Of course, it's not always yours. Depends on how you perform, I guess, and what collaboration skills you bring, and also how long you enjoy being in that role. So yes, okay, yeah. And I guess in terms of the mindset, I remember when I started following you first and reading the book and everything, what really stuck with me. And I also signed up for one of the free sessions that I really appreciated, because I shared with you, I had my aha moment. I had that same kind of falling into the trap that probably most, if not all of your participants have. It's like, I thought, oh my God, I'm this coach and I work with leaders and I get it. I get what tough leadership training is talking about, this adult to adult communication. I'm a nonviolent communication trainer. I should know how to do that. And I failed miserably. And it was so humbling. It was refreshingly humbling. And I will never forget that. It just was in my face.
Yeah.
So clear.
Yeah.
So,
and that is because we are all given by whoever we are, and we are enlightened and everything, and have trained a lot. We are given by a traditional leadership paradigm that is so extremely strong that we are also totally blind to it. So we swim in this paradigm and we act accordingly without being aware of it. And when we do that, and when we are in a leader position, we end up being like a parent, because we are driven by one question, and that is, how could I make my team be more engaged? How can I make Emma sell more? How can I make Michael be less arrogant to the clients? And this is what drives us. And that question in our head is making us very responsible. And of course, we are formally responsible as managers and leaders, but this is how we're being responsible. And when we are being that way, people around us are less accountable, less responsible, and they also wait for us all the time to take initiative. And that is the sort of employee mindset, one can say. So what we do with managers when we train them is to confront them how strong this is, how much a parent you are in your style. You can be a very caring parent, or you can be a very critical parent, but you are your version of a parent. And when you confront that, you can see how much that is in the way for people to engage and take responsibility and step into the game and flourish. So we sometimes say that we break the hierarchical dynamic by training managers. And nowadays we also train employees, but employees takes less time because they long to get into the game. Many of them, they want to impact, they want to use their self fully. So for them, it's a matter of getting that they have a mandate, getting that they can step in and be aware of how much they are waiting.
Yeah. And I wonder, how do you make sure from the beginning that the leaders, if you're not buying the company, are in and are really in, and not kind of imploding at the first or second sign of, oh my God, things aren't as planned? How do you identify?
Yeah, I think that is the biggest challenge if you talk about self-organizing, if you talk about other ways of working, like agile teams, and you being the scrum master, or we have a thing called trust-based ways of working in the public sector here in Sweden, and it's the same idea to get more out of people who are employed and untap their wisdom and their knowledge and their capacity. But there is a lack of brave leaders that can consider this. So in Sweden, there are not so many self-organized companies, and the ones exist is often founded by a younger generation with people that have a different outlook and are less traditional as leaders. So I worked with a few startups, and they are not at all so given by the old paradigm as others. But and in more established companies, I haven't met so many during the 25 last years I've been around.
Okay.
But I said to you when we talked before that at one point we were contacted by a logistic company with around 200 people, with a very experienced CEO, a woman, and she had been on this logistical company for 4 years and tried to change it in different ways. She was very into lean, that's a philosophy, which is very much rhymes with, what we think is good and working. And she wanted to try out self-organizing principles in her organization. But what we could state from the beginning is what the culture they had there was one of distrust and silence. So we needed to sort of shift the climate, and that's one of the crucial things, to be able to shift working climates so that they become, what I said before, trustful and open and safe. So that was what we did to start with, because you cannot start with any change really, and least of all in integrating self-management, because that will just backfire on big time.
Yeah.
So when we had shifted the climate at the headquarter, basically with 70 people, which took around 4 weeks in 3 major sessions with everyone involved. So that's one thing we have here at TUF. We have a method to shift dysfunctional working climates. And then she was brave enough, this woman CEO, to just close down her management team because it was so dysfunctional. So she didn't have a management team. And bit by bit, they also took away managers. They didn't fire managers, but some of them choose to stop or go somewhere else. And then the teams that now didn't have a manager, they could choose if they wanted a new one or if they wanted support in being self-organized, which most teams did.
Wow, that's a pretty radical step she took there.
And
basically dissolved her executive team.
Yes, and she is one of a kind, because I said, I think I never met anyone, and I meet around 2,000 managers a year, of course, in our trainings and everything. So I meet a lot of managers, so I know how rare that is and how brave she was doing that, which is really what we need in the world if we are going to have some modern workplaces.
Yes. Yeah, and I'd like to go back actually, or to this point that you already mentioned, because I think it's one of the key insights that you had and that now Chrysos is continuing, which is the idea of it's not enough, maybe even if your method is genius to shift dysfunctional working climates. This buying the company is the most radical that you can do, so that you have the freedom to actually really work with the employees and hand over the power, let's say, or the shared leadership fully.
Yeah.
So going back, you were maybe one of the first, if not the first. I have not heard of anywhere else.
Well,
But
Ricardo Samle was before me for sure, and a few others. And
okay,
we have some pioneers in Sweden also that I've met,
okay,
like
okay.
two different men that have done really great things. But they completely unknown. But I interviewed them a couple of years ago. So I was early, but not the earliest. I don't
Not
think.
the earliest. Okay.
Doesn't matter if I was early either. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, but I think it's just wonderful that you had this idea and said, okay, we have to buy it. And then you found the idea of crowdfunding, so to speak, before it even existed by inviting colleagues who believed in the same idea and that had the same vision. So they were purpose aligned. And each of you was willing to put in your own money to buy companies and then do the work that you so believed in. Can you share a little bit about that? Because that sounds so easy, like, yeah, we just pitched in and then we did it. But maybe there's more to it. And I'd love to have us and our audience understand, how can we do that today?
Yes. Well, if I knew then what I knew now, I am a bit of an entrepreneur, and I love, trying out theories, good theories in practice. So I want to try if they work, and also I learn a lot on how you do things by trying, experimenting. But so in that time, I had been lecturing about this, about self-management just after this early hotel case in 2001 and 2. And people were so skeptical and reluctant and laughed at me, and it was no fun to talk about this. So I stopped doing that, more or less. And my thought was, we need to prove that this works.
Right.
So that was the big driver of us buying companies, because so to do it fully, we couldn't do that as consultants, we saw. And so and it was not a lot of money. We bought a small bankrupt health company, and re-employed the people that were recently laid off and started it off again.
Oh, so you rehired them. Okay.
Yes, it just bankrupted, and just a few weeks after we found it and decided to buy it. So the business was quite easy to rescue, sort of, because they had clients, so it was like to restart it, sort of.
Right.
So that's what we did, and the actual empowering people to work that way was not as challenging as the business, because the problems we were up against was more the conditions of the sector and financing. So we were up against quite ugly financial situations, which was also a learning experience, because then we need to involve the employees who were, of course, used to so traditional situations, had their salary, and we asked them, well, this company won't survive if we don't do anything radical here. What can you do? And they offered to go down in salary, and you've been very helpful. It was a lot of learning experience, and the call center that we later bought was also the sector was in a big change where it was digitalized, and we assumed that the capacity and the competence were inside of the company. But it showed that it maybe wasn't that much competence, because the owner had been so hierarchical, so all the competence sat in the owner, and he was just like ordering people around and so on. So it was really a learning experience, and we couldn't do what we do today without it. But I would not want to do it over again. I wouldn't have I wouldn't do it exactly the same, because it was really risky.
Right. Yes.
It was really risky. And after like 7 or 8 years, also the world had shifted. I mean, Frederick Laloux wrote his book, and the agile movement started to arise. So
Right.
all of a sudden, it wasn't so much need for proofs anymore. So then we shifted to help others, and not only self-organizing companies, but also workplaces. Because when we started 23 years ago, nobody had any problems. We were talking about a new way of leading, and nobody wanted to listen to us because nobody had any pains. Today, we have so much pain. We have, where is the innovation? People are sick from work. Burnout rate is galloping, and we have so many challenges, and we need to keep people motivated. What is it, 17% are motivated and engaged at work, and all those troubles that you all know about.
Yeah.
And so many want to install new ways of working. But what is in big and traditional organizations here in Sweden, as I said, we have something called trust-based ways of working, which is the same idea, but it stays with words and theory. So the organizations don't move; they just talk about it.
Okay.
And the self-organizing that are brave and radical, they often end up in a culture that is very family. Like they are like loving each other, they love bombing each other, and they are so much fun, but they can't talk straight to each other. They can't talk about what's not working. And then there's a risk that those cases fails, and people say, well, it didn't work. And when they say that, it's always the culture. So today we prefer and have chosen to be of service to both radical organizations, but also traditional, and we are also very engaged in meaningful organizations like schools, like healthcare, and all that our society depends on. So especially schools and places for people with handicap or like difficulties that need support, and those organizations are extra important that they work.
Yeah.
Rather than insurance companies.
Yeah.
They can. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to speak to what you just mentioned around, it was different then, and people or organizations didn't really feel the pain, so didn't quite see the necessity, even though there were examples of how profitability was up, engagement was up, but wasn't quite painful enough yet. And now the time of pain has arrived and may not get less, but maybe more. So it's that is where the pull or the interest can come from, to go more deeply into, would that be something for us?
Yes.
And of course, also the numbers and the projects that are successful speak for themselves. So if you wanted to, you can find, for example, with the help of Corporate Rebels, of course, that are doing all of these case studies and tons of videos and people to interview or have been interviewed, company owners, CEOs, etc. And I just want to speak also to the succession crisis that I will be focusing also, especially in Germany, but I think Germany is not the only country. Hundreds of thousands of employments are at stake, at risk, if we don't offer, let's say, a third way, I like to call it, the third option of helping small and medium enterprises to do something that will leave their legacy at a different level, where they don't, if they want to try and hand it over to children are maybe not interested, whatever, or who knows. And then a buyer, private equity, is maybe not quite that warm relationship that I feel. Of course, that person might be prioritizing profitability, but will it be good for my baby, for my life's legacy? And I see that self organization, self management, especially with this idea of buying it and then helping the owner really understand what is going to happen, and maybe being there as an advisor, but really having handed over. Once you have bought it, then the owner will know that that is a different role that they're stepping into. I think that's a huge opportunity for Germany, but also other countries.
Yeah, I agree. And also to, there are some cases where the employees maybe can buy the company.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And run it by themselves instead of finding the new owner, the entrepreneur.
Right.
And instead unleashing the power within the existing company.
Yes. And my understanding would be that to find a way with crowdfunding, impact funding, or other possibilities, depending on the country that you're in, then doing the transformation so that it's sustainable. And then the primary audience is the employees, to ask them, are you now feeling empowered, and do you trust yourself enough now? Do you feel confident that you know how to govern yourself? Can you do it? And ideally, after 3, 4, 5 years, they have come to that point and then engage and become entrepreneurs together. I guess that's what Dunya said in our last interview, that is the ideal target at the end of the transformation. And if not, then maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of those employees that have had significant roles over the time have gained that confidence, and they might do it together. So yes, that's the main objective. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that involves also to invite people to change their view of what is it to own a company.
Yes.
And find new models. I myself, of course, tough leadership training is self-organized. And when we own companies together, me and my colleagues, everyone was enthusiastic in the beginning, but when the rough times came, everyone also realized that it's not so fun to be an owner, because the owners need to find the money to support the company, to invest and So I think, but from a bigger perspective, society and investors could create support systems so that it's not so challenging and hard to own a company.
Yeah. So I wonder if you can share with us a couple of stories, so to speak, and then towards the end, and please, our audience, feel free to also give us any questions to any of the topics that we've had so far about buying companies, transforming, offering this to traditional and to progressive organizations, and also I also thought maybe the method to shift dysfunctional working climates, to get a sneak peek. So if our audience is interested in any of these topics, please let us know and we will respond. But I was wondering if you can share a little bit, some cases that give us more. I remember you saying something just as an idea in our pre-call. You said this eternal cry for clarity. And then you gave me a little bit. So
exactly what I thought of. Yeah, I had the same. So one unavoidable phase in turning a company upside down, whatever you want to call it, is when people have gotten the mandate, they then will end up in what I call the eternal cry for clarity. So it's like, how should we make it? Where are the instructions? Where is the manual, one can say? So this happened also in the logistic company that I mentioned before. So one of the teams that was early in choosing to be without a manager was the marketing team. And they sat in every meeting and said, we don't know where we're heading. Where are the instructions, more or less?
Right.
And we kept saying to them, your function as a marketing team is quite well formulated. and what's expected of you is in the business plan, more or less, which comes from the board in this case. So you need to figure out how you will fulfill on your assignment or what your task is here.
Mm-hmm.
And we said it over and over again, and it was not them, it's the paradigm that makes people so used to getting the information from outside, So very many people call me and say, we have this, we are on our way to self-organizing now, but we have this problem with people asking for information, and I said that don't feed them information, that's not the solution. So that will never ever stop. You have to sort of bring up this issue and make them aware of that this is their habit, and they need to figure it out. And once that happens, they start to be constructive and and creative. So that's good to know, that is something that is very predictable when you start to change.
So when you look, or you can come from a particular leader that you have in mind, or we can describe more generic, but what kind of leader have you seen to be most open and capable of making this shift, of unlearning, of again and again failing and saying, oh, I did it again, I fell into the trap, I did the child parenting kind of thing. So who are they? What's the prototype? Can you describe what's their mindset? How do they behave? How do they even get the idea to be open to this? And what are they hungry for? What are the prerequisites?
So if we talk managers that as a type, they are not managers because of the title and the prestige. They are managers because they are passionate about what they're doing and a bit passionate about people. You need to love people to consider this.
Yes, I agree.
And very few managers, unfortunately, are hired because of their love for people. They are hired because they are knowledgeable, and or have a strong drive of getting things going. And that's also why it's so hard for those managers to shift to being a facilitator and not be in the foreground and trust others to drive the engines, sort of.
Right.
So when I talk to all sorts of organizations about who are the future managers, if you are going to have managers, I say look for introvert people that don't at all consider themselves as leaders or managers. They are the best because they're good at listening, they have good people skills, and that's your future leaders, really.
All right. That seems to be counterintuitive. That's probably a surprise.
And if I take an example, we had a municipality here in Sweden that wanted to completely shift how they are working into much more modern. And they were on the verge of saying to me, Karin, we want to do all 5,000 employees, And I said, that's a big, do you want to burn money? So start with the people that are intrigued, that are interested, that are curious, that wants something else, and then build on a small team somewhere. And then they will be ambassadors to the next wave. And in this municipality, that is actually happened. We started out with 3 managers and their teams and did some transformational work. And I mean, it's not self-organized, but it's so much more involving and teamwork-based work. And then they became really good ambassadors to all. So they got people asked them, come and lecture, tell us this story about this healthcare team. It's so fascinating. And then we had like a queue next time that we wanted to do the next initiative.
Yes. Okay.
So my message is if you're a big organization, start small. And also in this logistic company, we made a mistake there, because the CEO was this brave woman that I talked about.
Yes.
She was very keen on talking about, we are going to be self-organized. And that was a big learning for me. Don't talk about what you are going to be, because that just causes skepticism, fear, worries, and rumors and gossip. And it takes a lot of focus from the change. It's just like a debate on if it's good or not. So I started, instead of talk about more collaboration, because collaboration is quite a not such a dangerous word, because everybody can, buy that it's good with more collaboration, because that's what it is about. And if you, empower more collaboration, one day you might wake up and be self-organized.
Yeah. So rather than talking about a state that has a label that is more static, it's better to speak in verbs, something that you do, like you collaborate differently, you hold meetings differently, you commit. So it's actually something also for them then to discover, how are we going to do this ourselves?
And also find their self-interest. If you start out by saying, we are going to be self-organized, I'm a manager, are you going to sack me? Or what are we going to do? And I don't want I want a manager. I don't want to be without a manager. So it's just like really stupid to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking a little bit at the time, because I said, 10 minutes before the end, we're definitely going to look for some questions. Are there any questions? Please let us know and just write them in the chat. I wonder if you can go a little bit deeper into the principles that you have distilled. I feel you are, there you are. Yeah, over this period of 2 decades or more, what would you say are really the pillars, if one wants to seriously consider, I don't know, maybe sign up for one of your trainings, sign up for my coaching program? How do I know that I am able to unlearn, and how is this principle landing with me? Is it attractive to me so much so that I could spend a year in Marion's program, or in a tough leadership training program, or even imagine having a consulting firm like you and me come in and help me do the transformation? What are the main principles I need to get ready for?
Yeah, so it is this principle of starting to relate as people being capable. That's the core thing in being the key person. If you're the owner, if you're the leader, if you're the manager, or if you just are a key person in an organization, that is what you want to investigate. How are you in relating to people's capacity? Because the better you are in relating to people's capacity, the more capacity will unleash. And that is not, abdicating and say good luck, to people. It's being there, and it's also being really straightforward in communication when capacity is not unleashed, and giving straightforward feedback with empathy. So, and it's also to really let go of this control and responsibility burden, and share the responsibility and put it with your team. So one example from just like ordinary work life that I challenge managers with is, if you go to your team next meeting, and instead of having your agenda prepared and just facilitate from that and broadcast a lot, another principle is to learn how to listen, so that people really feel heard. That you need to train. But if you go to this team meeting, and instead of doing your agenda that you have prepared, you just say to your team, so we all agree where we are heading, right? Because we did all the strategy thinking and we know the goals. What do you think is the most urgent matter, or the crucial thing we should talk about and discuss to to succeed in what we are up to.
Right.
And then you will think together with your team.
And create the agenda.
Exactly. So that's the pillar is leadership again, to be a completely other kind of leader and facilitate and unleash and empower, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That's my timer.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
the other
I like how you emphasize facilitate, because that's one thing I also tell my clients, the new way, the new style of leading, you could say leader's coach, et cetera, but it's really letting go of having to be the leader, the knower, the one that prescribes or feels responsible for the agenda and thousands of other things, and becoming the bottleneck and burning out. But really being a facilitator. It's actually easy for you because you're just, practically creating the circumstances so that others can jump in and do what they love to do.
Exactly.
They just, yeah.
And collaborate with each other. So you don't
yeah.
And then it's I come back to the working climate, because we talk about that a lot. We talk about psychological safety and we think we know what we talk about, but I meet very few people who actually have experienced psychological safety, and because that lack of experience, we think that when we are not, fighting with each other, it's done. The lack of conflicts, but psychological safety and trust and straightforward communication goes so much beyond that.
Yeah.
And to have that happen is hard work, which starts, and that starts with a strong commitment to be open yourself and have find allies that can sort of maintain and manage this openness. So we have a saying at Tafat: nothing is too little to sort out. And then people might think we are in therapy all day and never work, but we are really skilled in resolving small pebbles, we call it. It's like having a pebble in your shoe if you have an issue with a colleague, a relationship issue. So you have to train yourself to quickly restore trust with others, to take up things that is, a friction or something. And if everyone does that in a workplace, then they will produce this working climate of safety that we need. So you can't do that as a leader yourself. You can commit and you can lead the way, but doing that with a group of people takes enormous amount of commitment and work. And we were talking also, or I would also say, why should you do this if it's so complicated and tricky? But I want to remind you that this is about profitability in the end, because what it unleashes is engagement and accountability. And that in the end is like causing efficiency and in the end profitability. Yes. And there are so much research about how much those safe environments, how profitable they are. And I usually say, if people knew how much money there is in this, and the core skill is to listen so that people feel heard, then people would run to the listening gym and, try to be a really good listener, because it's so profitable. But and that's not unfortunately the case.
Yeah. And I like the little distinction I believe you mentioned yesterday, and I so agree. It's as a leader, if I'm listening to you talk, I could say, well, of course I listen. And I can do active listening, and I can tell you, I heard you. But that's not the point. No. It's the inquiry into, does the other person feel heard by me? And exactly. They may not be open enough to share that with me, because they may not even expect that, because they never experienced that elsewhere, nor with me. But there is a great distinction between, I heard the facts that you said, and we're done, or to really be somebody who's present, who asks good questions and then shuts up and listens, and then can also go to a deeper level that involves the whole being in front of me, including emotions, obviously, and the small pebbles, and having them trust that no pebble is too small for me to be interested in, right?
Exactly. So it's a way of being and being present. And I heard on the radio yesterday, because we have a lot of troubles in Sweden right now with the shootings and the criminal, young people being criminal. And they talked on the radio about an initiative they had in the social sector to help families with kids that been drawn into, bad things. And when they talked about this, they nurtured this myth of it takes long time to gain trust, which I really don't like, because trust is a function of how you're being, and if you can listen so that people feel heard. And if you can do that, you can gain trust in minutes.
Yes, I totally agree. I cannot imagine that you just said that, because that's what I constantly find myself interrupting people when they say, and it's so hard. It's so hard. It's like, no, it is not. You can do it really within seconds sometimes if you're present.
Yeah.
And if you're committed, if you're really committed to having that connection established, it can happen quite fast. Yes, I couldn't agree more. Fantastic. Yeah, so we're coming to the end. Unfortunately, we haven't had any questions yet. I mean, please, if there are any, I strongly encourage you again to come up. But is there anything that you would like to share with us, Karin, before we come to a close?
No, I just want to say that there is no right way. So, because I always get the question, how do you do it? Where's the manual? What book should I read? And of course, you can read books. You can read my book. You can read Lalou's book, and there are loads of books. And even Maverick is really great still, although it's 30 years or more. And we have also podcasts called Leader Morphosis that tough empowers. And there are so many people sharing about stuff. So you can get inspiration, but you don't need a manual. What is needed is courage, patience, and trust.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for saying that. And I just want to also emphasize that, one of the great resources I have found is, of course, Corporate Rebels.
Yeah.
And so much so that over the last few years, my coaching program, that is an ICF globally accredited coaching program targeted at mostly leaders and, of course, aspiring and experienced coaches. But more and more of these principles have found their way into the program. And I feel very nourished and very hopeful by people like you, by Corporate Rebels that have, really put it on their flag and their mission to make more of the successful cases, including their profitability, which is like amazing, right? Like you said, if people knew and were more in touch with it, that we would all be running and doing that. So, I've been greatly inspired, so much so, like I said, that the coaching program has been geared now towards that as a transformational leadership coaching program, and that my work is entirely shifting to self-management, like yourself. And so thank you very much. I actually hope that we will also get to meet in person. And for the viewers, also, I want to say that Lisa Gill, that you just mentioned, your colleague, will also be appearing here in the Unbossing Leadership LinkedIn Lives. Okay, Christian, he says, I missed most of this, but would be interested in a recording. Of course, yes, it'll be published. And he says, I love the concept of trust credit. If a leader trusts their people, all is well. Yes, thank you so much, Christian. Thank you so much, everybody who was listening here today. I look forward to hearing more questions and comments. We will be providing the whole recording, but also snippets here and there to focus on certain topics that you mentioned, because they're so valuable and dense. And see you next time in Unbossing Leadership LinkedIn Live. Thank you, Karin, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye-bye.